Welcome to episode 7 of my road trip through the American South that I got to do with my buddy Evan this past spring. Here, we make our way to the Bankhead National Forest in Alabama as we were now looping back in the direction of North Carolina where Evan lives. Before continuing any further, if you haven't seen the Northern Alabama video I did, I'd strongly recommend you watch that first. It was an absolutely unforgettable 2 days in the state, which you wouldn't in a million years expect to have natural advantages quite as amazing as it has. The reason I decided to give the Bankhead National Forest its own vlog, despite the fact that it's also situated in Northern Alabama, is because I found it to be incredibly special and distinct from anywhere else in the state, maybe even the region. Located an hour and a half northwest of Birmingham, Alabama's largest metropolitan area, the Bankhead spans 181,230 acres and is known as the land of 1,000 waterfalls. While none of the ones here are especially massive, what makes them special is their turquoise color, which they get from calcium carbonate dissolved from the limestone over which the water flows. The same process is why the world-famous waterfalls on the Havasupai tribal lands of Arizona are as blue as they are. So in that way, the Bankhead National Forest is sort of a miniature version of Havasupai, but in the eastern United States. The region also contains many interesting rock formations dating back to the Ice Age 2 million years ago. And we're going to concentrate on that for the first part of the video as we head to a spot 30 minutes west of the Bankhead that's probably about 25 miles away from the border with Mississippi, which is crazy because it feels unlike anything you'd find in the Magnolia State. And believe me, we'd know after driving all the way through it earlier that day, which is why we actually pulled up to Dismals Canyon, that's the name of it, right before they were about to close it, which I think was about 4:30, so pretty frickin' early. That, along with the $20 admission fee, makes a visit quite the commitment, but after you see what this place looks like, I think you'll begin to understand why it was such a priority for us. The trail that was built along the canyon floor is approximately 1 mile round trip and incredibly fun to traverse. But before we walk through it, one other thing I wanted to mention is that Dismals Canyon was declared a National Natural Landmark in 1974, which are particularly outstanding examples of America's natural history. You begin by making your way down a series of steps, probably close to 100 feet of elevation loss, and then you come back the way you came at the end, but otherwise the trail is almost completely flat. You'll quickly spot the first of a few waterfalls here, formed as the Dismals branch of Bear Creek drops 15 feet into a pool that marks the mouth of the canyon. The water is also incredibly clear from the get-go, but it only gets more beautiful as you go on. Before you know it, you'll be sandwiched in between enormous mossy boulders, some of which have gentle and narrow waterfalls flowing off of them. The way the trail snakes its way around and sometimes even through the rocks is excellent. They frequently form small talus caves that you walk through, so it gets pretty dark at times. At many other points in the trail, you'll notice that you're really in more of a gorge than a canyon as the creek carves its way through the landscape. It is so incredibly beautiful and adds a ton to the already lush environment of Dismals Canyon. To touch on the more technical elements of the trail, there's a handful of elevated wooded pathways and optional creek crossings, plus an awesome suspension bridge at the end that certainly sways side to side. No doubt my favorite stretch of the hike takes place in the latter half as the boulders once again narrow in, but this time they're extremely steep and sometimes vertical. You add another one of those tall and skinny seasonal waterfalls, followed by a bridge under a rock overhang that takes you to a much more consistent and defined waterfall. The only downside with this is there really isn't a way to get right up to the waterfall's base, but it is a spectacular complement to the scene regardless. After this, there's also a slot canyon that requires a tight squeeze to get through, and the natural light shining through on the other end left my jaw on the floor. That and the aforementioned suspension bridge were the perfect cap to our time exploring Dismals Canyon.
Dismals Canyon blew me away. This is easily one of my favorite spots in Alabama. I've been to very few places as lush as this canyon.
Yeah, that was awesome. That far exceeded expectations. I didn't really know exactly what to expect going in, but man, it just blew me away. Just the way they designed going down through all the canyons and the rocks down there. It was so freaking cool. And the waterfalls, I mean, that was just a top tier experience.
I might even say worth the $20 admission for the one time. It was that good.
Up next, we'd be making our way into the official boundaries of the Bankhead National Forest for the first time. And something to note about driving through this place to access the different trailheads is there's an awful lot of non-paved roads, dirt and gravel. Some of these aren't maintained super well, but I still believe you can tackle any of the ones we did using a two-wheel drive vehicle.
Alright, we've got about 2 hours before sunset. Yeah, we've just been driving through Mississippi all day, so it's been a grind. Go check out that Mississippi video if you haven't already, by the way. But yeah, we're really excited to be here. We're going to see as many waterfalls as we can before the sun goes down, and then tomorrow we have another half day to spend here.
Our top recommendation if you visit the Bankhead is you absolutely must see Shangri Falls. This is a 2.9 mile round trip hike that's mostly flat but does have 250 feet of elevation gain coming back to the car park. And speaking of which, a lot like most of the other locations in this national forest, you aren't going to find many large parking areas, and there isn't even any signage or markers here. Please download offline maps if you come here for road and trail navigation. For a bulk of this hike, there isn't much going on, but it does fly by until you get to the real interesting stuff towards the end. As you make your way down to Collier Creek, there's some amazing rock features scattered about, sometimes with small waterfalls coming off of them. Also, peep that watercolor. This is where the turquoise hue starts to come into play, especially when it comes to Shangri Falls, one of my favorite waterfalls I've ever seen in the eastern US. I couldn't find a posted height for this and many of the other falls in the area, which is a testament to how they're lesser known and visited. But it's not very tall at all, it's just the quaint nature of the spot, whether it be that we had it to ourselves or that the location along the creek was phenomenal. All of it put together made this feel like a fairy tale. Shangri Falls also had the most vibrant color of all the waterfalls in the Bankhead National Forest, so that of course was gorgeous as well. Finally, we were so impressed by the flow rate, as the falls out here can take a lot of rain to really get going. We knew spring was going to be a good time of year to do this trip, but we weren't sure if the Bankhead was more of an early spring spot or if it was good all season long. As it turned out, it didn't matter for us, as there was a major rainstorm the night prior, and I'd consider us very, very lucky to see these falls almost immediately after.
Oh man, Shangri Falls, what a first impression of the Bankhead. This is incredible. For a long time, I thought the turquoise pools that you see at the bottom of the waterfalls here was very oversaturated in editing, but now being here, I can absolutely tell you it is as cool as you would think it would be, and the sun isn't even shining on it. This is amazing.
I was not expecting this to be as cool as it was. The Bankhead's kind of known for like the waterfalls not flowing really well, especially in this time of year, which is getting near summer, but the flow is fantastic on this, and then the watercolor is absolutely popping right now, so man, what an awesome spot.
The next most vibrant waterfall, at least from our knowledge, is Holmes Chapel Falls, so we drove 25 minutes on some paved, some non-paved roads to get to it before sundown. This is a far shorter trail at just 0.4 miles round trip with only 85 feet of elevation gain, though almost all of it is packed into one section as you get down to its base. But before that, you'll notice one of the main things differentiating Holmes Chapel Falls to Shangri Falls is the fact that you can get right on top of this one. These upper views gave the spot much appreciated variety and nicely demonstrated the waterfall's height, which clearly was more than Shangri Falls. That said, in totality, I wouldn't rank this quite as high, as the location is a bit less cool and the color was noticeably less impactful. If we had seen this first, I'm sure we would have been flabbergasted by that pool at the bottom, as it was still pretty emphatic. What makes up for that, however, is your ability to walk to the side of and even behind the waterfall. The trail doesn't necessarily continue under the rock overhang, but if you're careful, you can rock hop over there, and I'd encourage you to do so for sure.
Make it 2 for 2 for really awesome waterfalls on the Bankhead with that super cool turquoise color at the base. Just amazing. I think I like the first waterfall a little bit more, but this one's not too far behind. It's really, really incredible. I would definitely recommend it.
Yeah, I'd probably agree. Like, as an individual waterfall, this might be more impressive, but the other one had better surrounding, and so I'd probably choose that one a little bit more. But both are absolutely amazing waterfalls, and it's so underrated.
All right, we'll see you guys in the morning. We're running out of daylight. We got a lot more to explore here in the Bankhead National Forest in Alabama.
The next morning, we attempted the hike to Fall Creek Falls, not to be confused with the much taller, much more popular waterfall in central Tennessee of the same name. Of all the spots we cover today, this one is likely the least known, and we come to find out why momentarily, but the irony is that this and the next handful of falls actually don't require unpaved access roads for a change. The trail spans 2.1 miles round trip, and it's almost completely flat. We were almost instantly enamored by the river on the left-hand side. The color was insane, and that's without any sunlight. Not to mention, there's some unnamed waterfalls you pass by that add a lot too. But all of a sudden, we noticed the trail just disappeared, and you'll never believe why.
Alrighty, so we were trying to get to Fall Creek Falls, which didn't look like anything amazing, but it was just another waterfall to tack onto our list. But you do have this river crossing. I know this is the right way because I did hear of a river crossing on this hike, but that's pretty deep right now. I think because of all the rain they've been getting lately. Yeah, you can see that ladder out there. So that's how you know this is the right way. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think just because of all the rain they're getting, that usually this is probably more of a manageable river crossing, but this is probably 2 or 3 feet deep, and I just don't know if we're willing to go swimming to see this waterfall. So I think we're just going to turn around.
I now can understand why I'd heard so little about Fall Creek Falls, as it's really only worth it when it's flowing good, but then you have the juxtaposition of the river crossing being a lot crazier, so it seems you'd have to time a visit here perfectly to see this one. Although we never reached Fall Creek Falls, I'm still glad we saw the first half of the trail because it was extremely beautiful, maybe our favorite hike in the National Forest, disregarding the eventual payoff. It also didn't take long for things to pick up again because our next 2 waterfalls were literally a mile up the road and require a far shorter trail. Now, All Trails states that you're able to access these from the same parking lot with the Fall Creek Falls trailhead, but that's no longer true these days, so you'll actually want to hit up some roadside parking where you then maneuver down a hill to get to Mize Mills Falls. It's so short that I think it would be approachable for most people, just be careful because it was a little bit sketchy. The waterfall may be smaller than most of the others we visit, but I actually really like it for its location. The little gorge it's in is so lush, and the base pool is awesome, even if the color was muted as a result of the sun having not risen high enough. But I loved all the differing perspectives, the fall shape has a cool split to it, it's absolutely worth checking out. And then just up the trail, you'll proceed along the creek and in no time make it to Turkey Foot Falls. We were relieved to find this one as we weren't exactly sure where it was located. All we knew was that it was super close by to Dismals Falls, so we went with our gut and found it pretty easily, fortunately. While it's similarly on the smaller side and partially blocked by trees and bushes, I enjoyed this one for many of the same reasons as the last waterfall. Satisfying shape, location, pool, what's not to love?
So we did end up finding Dismals Falls and Turkey Foot Falls, which are both really cool. They're smaller scale, but they still maintain that little blue pool at the bottom, which is awesome.
Yeah, both these waterfalls are really awesome. Dismals is kind of more like a little cascade, but it has a really cool surroundings, and the pool down there is really cool. And this one's definitely more of a defined waterfall. It's still pretty small, but just the surrounding is what make these waterfalls so cool.
Salgahody Falls was to us the sleeper hit of Bankhead National Forest, as it's by far the largest waterfall around, but it's also going to require the longest hike too. It's still just 3.4 miles, so it's not too bad or anything. There's also not much elevation gain, so it's actually got an easy rating on all trails. What also helps is it's engaging most of the way there with so many unique advantages of that silky smooth greenish blue river that we talked about earlier. You get even more time to appreciate it here, and that was amazing. Plus, this had some of the most badass unnamed waterfalls conceivable. These things were so tall, and the steep cliffs they flow off of shocked us. I kept thinking, man, this would have been worth our time without the waterfall, so it's amazing that it exists and that it's unbelievably outstanding too. Salgahody Falls combines elements of all of the other waterfalls in the National Forest, culminating in something truly special. It's obviously the biggest and has quite the colorful pool at its base, but it's also got an immensely satisfying shape to it, and the canyon surrounding is phenomenal. You can walk right alongside it to the left, cross the creek to see it from the right, the list just goes on and on. I still might give it to Shangri Falls for what waterfall's my favorite in the Bankhead, only because its color is that impressive, but Salgahody Falls is right up there with it, that's for sure.
Salgahody Falls is amazing. This is definitely one of the highlights of the Bankhead. Evan was saying the flow was like unbelievable. He hasn't seen it like this in any pictures.
Yeah, usually it's just a little trickle, so to see it like this is incredible, especially during this time of year during May. This is incredible. And just the whole trail to get here was awesome. So yeah, this is probably my favorite spot maybe in the entire Bankhead.
The last waterfall we'd seek out in the National Forest is Casper Creek Falls, roughly 2 miles up the road from the last spot, which likewise requires you to off-road a bit. This trail is 1.2 miles round trip and very straightforward with pleasant scenery most of the way out. The waterfall was no doubt one of the least memorable though, as it lacked the flow and color of some of the others, but on its own I still thought it was well worth our time. It's great for much of the same reasons the other waterfalls are, and a lot like Holmes Chapel Falls, you can walk behind it if you so desire. That was definitely my favorite aspect of Casper Creek Falls, so overall I had a good time there.
And there it is, our last waterfall of the Bankhead National Forest, Casper Creek Falls, which is awesome, but generic compared to all the others that we've seen. I think if this was the first waterfall you saw in the Bankhead, you'd love this. But yeah, it's still a solid conclusion to our time here. Yeah, we're gonna head over to a nearby natural bridge to end out the video.
Yeah, that's nothing impressive, but it's still a really cool waterfall. And I mean, if you're in the area, it's right down the road from some of the other trails, so might as well just stop by. But yeah, it's nothing like too special compared to some of the other waterfalls in the area.
To wrap up the video, we say goodbye to the Bankhead National Forest, but remain in the northwest part of the state so we could experience Natural Bridge Park. This is maybe 30 minutes southwest of the forest, closer to Dismals Canyon if anything else, but this is another must visit, so I had to include it in the video.
We have made it to Natural Bridge Park. A common misconception is that there's only one natural bridge in this region. In the Bankhead itself, there is a smaller one, but this is the more well-known of the two. And for good reason, because according to this sign, it is the longest rock arch east of the Rockies, which is pretty incredible.
With Natural Bridge Park being privately owned a lot like Dismals Canyon, there is an entrance fee of a little under $10. This grants you access to a half-mile loop, but it is absolutely incredible. The first point of interest is a rock feature known as Indian Face, and if I zoom in on it, you can see that it really does look like a face. It actually reminds me a lot of that one emoji inspired by the Easter Island statues. I'll put it on screen in case you have no idea what I'm talking about. But what undeniably really steals the show here is the namesake Natural Bridge, which left me speechless. As if the region couldn't get any better, here I was looking up at a 150-foot long sandstone double arch that towers 60 feet above winding pathways. The trail design was epic as you're able to go right underneath both rock spans. I couldn't put my camera down, I was almost addicted to shooting this thing from every possible angle. In our opinion, this is totally worth seeing regardless of the detour, because for us, we must have driven an extra hour to see this. It was actually in the complete opposite direction of where we were heading next, but we just did not care once everything was said and done.
This is absolutely awesome. You can't truly appreciate the scale of this until you come here yourself. I did not know Alabama had natural arches this big, but yeah, this is one of the best you'll find on the eastern half of the United States for sure.
Yeah, that's one of the things you have to see in person. It's just so crazy huge. I mean, I just didn't realize how big it was going to be, and the fact that you kind of just walk all around it, the fact there's actually like another little smaller arch attached to the main bridge.
Yeah, it's a double arch.
Yeah, it's so cool. So yeah, this is not something you would expect to see in Alabama, but man, it's an awesome spot.
And that does it for the Bankhead, an amazing place. Truly so glad that we got to visit this hidden gem location in the state.
From all the little small waterfalls to the turquoise water to the rock features like Dismals Canyon, this natural bridge here, there's so much to see and do, and it's such an underrated spot. So yeah, I mean, if you can, I know it's remote, but try to get out here at some point because it's an awesome place.
Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.